Hey, and welcome to Board with Life News for February 14th. Today I'm going to talk about Asmoday acquiring Mayfair, Okavango, Forbidden City, Dose, Happy Planet Games, and the Kickstarter for Finca. Let's get to it. Hey, I'm Chris. Welcome to Board with Life News, and happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there that celebrates Valentine's Day. Is that the world? I don't know. It's probably just America. It's probably just like a corporate thing. I have no idea. Anyways, as I mentioned last week, very quickly, this is now a podcast. It's just the audio feed from this video. So if you prefer to listen to this as a podcast as opposed to watch it as a video, if you're driving, whatever, feel free to do that. You can find it. It's on iTunes and I think other stuff. I'm not sure yet. But if you search Board with Life News, it should come up. And yeah, hopefully that is helpful to you. Okay, into the news. Asmoday has acquired Mayfair Games. And Mayfair Games hasn't done a ton in the past couple years, ever since they sold off Catan, which was obviously their like giant brand, to Asmoday a few years back. They haven't done a ton aside from they own a controlling share in Lookout Games, and Lookout Games does a whole lot. So Lookout Games does pretty much every Uwe Rosenberg game. They've recently done Isle of Skye, the big hit, Baron Park. So that's kind of the big game part of it, is that all of Lookout Games are now going to be owned by Asmoday. It's unclear whether or not the Mayfair brand is going to exist anymore. They haven't said whether or not they're going to continue branding anything with Mayfair, or if it's just going to kind of go away, which is kind of crazy because Mayfair was the company. I mean, they were like the Asmodee of their time, kind of. And so it's sort of passing of the guard, which is interesting. And, you know, Asmodee is just acquiring everything now. So, not now, for the past couple of years. And doesn't seem to be any sign of stopping. And, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really... I'm not saying it's been a positive, but I don't think it's really been a negative per se either. As long as they keep doing what they're doing, the only risk is if there comes a day where they decide, never mind, we shouldn't be doing this, and they sell off. Anyways, but big news, big news. Okavango is a new game from Kiesling and Kramer, and there's very little information on this. W. Eric Martin over at BGG News said that he recorded a playthrough video, so he'll be posting that later, and hopefully we'll have a better understanding of what this is. But it's Kiesling and Kramer, and they're two of my favorite designers, so I'm going to talk about it. In it, your players acting as rangers in like the savannah, in like the African savannah, and I guess there's a drought, and you're trying to get animals to water. That's all there is. There's nothing on how the game plays or anything. There's just a photo and that. So I'm interested in it. They're great designers, and yeah. Forbidden City is a new game from Reiner Knizia coming out. Again, there's not a ton of information on this, but there's a little bit more. It's a tile-laying game, which I'm excited about, because he doesn't normally do tile-laying games, and I love tile-laying games, so... And in it, you're trying to increase your influence on, there's a very young emperor in China, and you're trying to influence him, basically. And the way you do that is by, like, laying tiles on the floor of the palace and trying to close off rooms once your influence is the greatest, which is kind of thematically weird, where it's like, you've got, like, a child's emperor, and you're trying to, like, talk to him, and when he starts listening, you, like, slam the door shut, I guess? I don't know. A little disconnect there, but I'm excited about it. Mattel announced Dose, which is a sequel to their obviously massively popular game Uno. So this seems like it has super similar rules to Uno. Instead of one pile of cards that you're playing onto, there's two pile of cards, and you have the option to put down two cards instead of one card. Good idea, I guess, having a sequel to your really popular game. The execution doesn't... It's just like, who wants that? Because if you already have Uno, it doesn't seem different enough from Uno. And there's a hilarious part of the article I read, a quote from somebody at Mattel saying that the game had taken 2 years of development, and quote, mainly to make sure it was different enough from Uno, which in their description does not seem different enough from Uno. And also 2 years of development on a game that's just the same mechanics is weird. I don't know. I mean, they have a tough needle to thread, where you've got this massively popular game, you want to sell other games based on that, and they've been doing that with like emoji rethemes and stuff like that. But you make a new game, and if it's too different, people won't play it, but if it's too the same, it's like, why does this even exist? I don't know. Your grandma's gonna own it. Happy Planet Games is a new imprint from North Star Games. This is going to basically be expanding out the Happy Salmon line of games that they introduced a year or two ago that was a pretty massive hit. If you've been to any board game conventions in the past year, you've definitely seen people playing Happy Salmon very loudly. There was an interesting article that came out a couple weeks back basically about how the game Happy Salmon releases the pheromones in your brain for happiness. And so it seems like they're basing a whole line of games around this and the cute fabric bags, basically. One of the games in the line is Funky Chicken. It is basically Happy Salmon, but with new moves where you'll be spinning, hip bumping, doing do-si-do, and the Funky Chicken. And you can combine that with the Happy Salmon game if you want an even crazier time. And the next game is Monster Match. It's a little bit different. You're rolling dice, and then you have to find monsters that match the attributes listed on the dice. And for some reason, you're winning donut points. I guess those are donuts. I guess the monsters are eating donuts. I don't know. They come in really cute bags, and I think they'll do well just because they make people happy. And Happy Salmon, people love Happy Salmon. So, yeah. This week's Kickstarter is for Finca. Finca is a rondel-based Euro game that was very, very popular when it first came out. It was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres in 2009, but it was beaten out by Dominion, which that was a tough year to go up for the Spiel. And it's been out of print for a couple years, and the rights to reprint it have been sort of floating around from a couple different companies, and there have been problems, blah, blah, blah. Well, now it seems like it's, assuming this Kickstarter funds, finally going to come back into print, which I'm excited about, because I love rondel games. So yeah, it's a good game. It's a really good, classic-feeling Euro game, which doesn't get people super excited these days, but mechanically it's super sound. And it is $41 right now on Kickstarter, so if my bad pitch for making a game sound really boring worked on you, go back that. Alright, that's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and make sure you follow me on social media. I'm at Chris Bryan Games on Instagram and Twitter. I do board game news every week as well as other videos, so if you're interested in staying up to date with all that stuff, those are the best ways to do it. Next week, I'll be releasing my design vlog to my $3 and up Patreons, patron backers, whatever it is. And that is basically, if you pledge $3 or up on my Patreon, you get access to a vlog where I'm going to make a video talking about all the games I'm currently designing and where I'm at and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a very behind-the-scenes process on how that works. So hopefully that's interesting to you. Speaking of Patreons, I want to thank Curtis Vorley, Jonah Stewart, Megan Hildebrand, and Simon Keast for backing me last week. And if you're interested in checking any of that stuff out, there's a link below where you can check out my Patreon page and see kind of the added value that you can get if you throw a couple bucks my way. All right, this week's question comes from @Daniel. I'm sorry, I can't say your last name. Skajald @Daniel Sidekick on Twitter. And he asks, any plans to self-publish? Yes. Like, so Favela is my game that came out through WizKids at the very end of last year. I had intended to self-publish Donald from Board with Life, that you might know from the show Board with Life that I did with him. And I were planning on starting a game company and kickstarting that game. And then Zev from WizKids played it, and he wanted to sign it, and I was at a point where I was pretty frustrated with the artist we had chosen and some other stuff, so I went, yeah, you do it. And I've designed a couple other games that I've sort of sat on for a while, thinking I might self-publish them because they'd be pretty simple to produce, or I think they do particularly well for that crowd, but it hasn't happened yet. I found out that I really like art directing stuff with I basically art directed Favelas. I really liked working with the graphic designers and artists and stuff, kind of making that into a product. I weirdly like doing spreadsheets and accounting things, so I think a lot of the parts of publishing that people go like, if you want to be a game designer, be a game designer. If you want to be a publisher, be a publisher. I think I kind of like some of the publishing parts of it. So I imagine I'm going to try that out someday. Right now I've got a couple fires on the iron of games that are in various points of production for other companies that I definitely want to focus a lot of attention on. So yeah, maybe. I think it would be interesting. I think it's a thing that I have certain talents that would do well with it. It's a thing where it's like I don't really want to do it as a hobby. If I can make it a career, maybe, and publishing is one way to turn design into a career. We'll see. We'll see someday. But yeah, I've definitely thought about it. And I guess I just need to take that leap eventually. All right. Great question. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week.